Hello children, today we are going to learn our chapter number 3, the Delhi Sultanate. In this chapter we are going to cover these points: Turkish rule in India, the Khaljis and the Tughlaqs, the Saids and the Lodis, and the administration in the Sultanate. First we will learn about the establishment of Turkish rule in India. The establishment of Turkish rule was a watershed event in the history of India. Watershed means a remarkable event in history of India. As we read in the previous chapter, Muhammad Ghori defeated Prithviraj Chauhan in the second battle of Tehran in 1192 CE. Then after, he left for Ghazni, that means Afghanistan, and he was succeeded by his trusted slave Qutbuddin Aibak, and he had laid the foundation of the slave dynasty and became the first Sultan of Delhi in 1206 CE. This dynasty is also referred to as the Mamluk dynasty. Mamluk is an Arabic word which means slave. Let us learn about the slave dynasty. The first ruler of the slave dynasty was Qutbuddin Aibak, and time was 1206 to 10 CE. Qutbuddin Aibak established himself as the ruler of the Sultanate in the Afghanistan and northern part of the Indian subcontinent. The kingdom established by him came to be known as the Delhi Sultanate. So we can say that whatever he has established, whatever kingdom he has established, that was known as Delhi Sultanate. Although he initially ruled from Lahore, he later shifted his capital to Delhi. First of all, he started in the starting phase. He had started ruling on India from Lahore, and then after he had shifted his capital to Delhi. Aibak was known as Lakbaksh, or the given of flags for the generosity. That means he constructed Quwwat ul Islam Mosque in Delhi and the Abda Hind in Jonara in Ajmer. He initiated the construction of the Qutub Minar but was unable to complete it. He had started the construction of Qutub Minar, but he could not finish it. He was died in an accident in 1210 CE while playing chogan, a kind of polo played while riding horse. That means while playing a game, he was died. Then after came in Iltutmish. Iltutmish was son-in-law of Qutbuddin Aibak, and he was the real consolidator of the Turkish conquest in North India. He ascended the throne in 1210 CE, aimed great opposition from the Turkish nobility as well as external revolt. That means he had faced opposition from the nobles of Turks, and as well as he had faced many revolts which was started from other part of the India. In order to win the support of the nobles, he granted them terrestrial possessions and concentrated his efforts on strengthening his empire while recovering lost territories. He had started recovering the lost territories, and then again he wanted to strengthen his empire. In this process, he acquired Ranthambore, Bayana, Mandor and Jalore while crushing the revolt in Bengal and Bihar. While crushing, he has crushed the revolts in Bengal and Bihar by the common people, and he had won Ranthambore, Bayana, Mandor and Jalore, and he had made them the part of his empire. He also strengthened the northwest frontier of his empire to safeguard it against Mongol invasion. He has made his empire safe from the Mongol invasion too. In order to introduce efficiency in his administration, Iltutmish organized his nobility into a selected group of 40 nobles called Chalisa or Chahalgani. He has developed a group of 40 nobles. That means he wanted to safeguard himself as well as his empire. He had established the group of these 40 nobles, which was known as Chalisa or Chahalgani. Now comes the Razia interlude. Razia Sultan, the only Muslim woman ruler of Delhi, succeeded Iltutmish. According to Minhaj-us-Siraj, chronicler of the period, Razia Sultan was a great monarch, wise, a dispenser of justice. That means she was believing in justice, and she was a very wise monarch. She was the protector of her subject, but born on the wrong gender. It was said that she was the protector of the subject. Subject means the people who are living in the kingdom, as well as, but she was a wrong gender. She was born as a woman. So, in the estimation of men, all her virtues were worthless. That means her virtues were worthless. Whatever work she has done, that was also worthless. Defying the gender bias and orthodox cultural practices of her age, she put on a male attire and appeared unveiled in public. That means she was used to put on attire of male, and that way she was used to go in the public. She succeeded in establishing law and order throughout the empire. That means she has maintained and she has protected the law and order in the empire. Her rule marked the beginning of power struggle between the Sultan and the Chahalgani. Chahalgani means the group of 40 people which was developed by Iltutmish. The nobles were opposed to the rule by female monarch and at the same time disapproved the high position she granted her Ethiopian slave Yakat. She had granted a high position to her Ethiopian slave, and his name was Yakat. But these nobles, the 40 peoples, this Chahalgani, they have opposed it and they did not give approval to him. This led to a revolt against her. She was murdered as part of a conspiracy by nobles while she was on her way to reclaim her empire. That means while she was coming back to get his empire, she was killed, she was murdered by these 40 people. That means these Chahalganis. Now comes Nasiruddin Mahmud and Ghiyasuddin Balban. After Razia, her brother Nasiruddin Mahmud came to the throne. He died in 1266 and was succeeded by Ghiyasuddin Balban, his prime minister and a former member of the Chalisa group. After Razia, her brother Nasiruddin Mahmud has come into the power, but he could not control, and he was died in 1266, and then after he was succeeded by Ghiyasuddin Balban, and he was the prime minister and the former member of Chalisa group. When Balban ascended the throne, he faced opposition from the Turkish chiefs who wanted one of their own candidates to occupy the throne. Balban also had faced some opposition from the Turkish chiefs. Why? Because from the Turkish chiefs they were wishing that from that only one of the person can be the Nawab, or that person can come into the throne. In order to offset opposition, he sought to centralize all power and authority in his own hand. That means he had taken all the empire in his hand. He tackled internal and external opposition with firmness. This is called the policy of blood and iron. That means external and internal, both the sides, opposition, that means opposed, which was taken place by the people, that he had tackled very nicely, and that policy was known as blood and iron. He laid the foundation of a centralized government and asserted the need for noble origin and prestige of the monarchy. He had made the foundation centralized. That means the law and order and everything he had made centralized. He established an efficient spy system to keep himself informed and to ensure the loyalty of the people towards the throne. That means he had developed a spy system. That means some of the detectives, they were there internally and externally to know whether the people are loyal to him or not. The Ganga Yamuna Dam was cleared of all robbers, and the Mewatis, who often plundered Delhi, were dealt with firmly. He also started the Persian customs of Sijda and Payabs. Ganga Yamuna Dam, they were cleared from the robbery. That means many people, they were coming over there, they robbed Delhi, they plundered Delhi. Plundered means they took all the wealth with them into other empire. And he has also started the Persian custom of Sijda and Payabs as a means of showing loyalty towards the emperor. Sijda means a custom in which a person had to kneel down and touch the ground with his forehead towards the king. And Payabs, that means the custom of bending before the sultan and kissing his feet. This means to show the loyalty towards the sultan. This Persian custom was found, so he has applied that also. He exercised impartiality in the administration of justice. He was completely impartial. He broke the power of the group of 40. That means the group of Chahalgani was also broken by him. Balban also strengthened the Delhi Sultanate, in particular its form of government and institution, thus paving the way of its expansion. He had tried to expand his empire too. Now comes the Khalji dynasty. That was from 1290 to 1320 CE. Balban died in 1287 CE. His successors proved to be weak and incompetent. In 1290 CE, a noble named Jalaluddin Khalji established the Khalji dynasty after killing Balban's grandson Kaikobad. After killing Balban's grandson Kaikobad, this Jalaluddin Khilji has come into the power, and he has become the ruler of Khalji dynasty, and he had found Khalji dynasty. Now Jalaluddin Khalji, timing is 1290 to 96 CE. The founder of Khalji dynasty, Jalaluddin Khalji, suppressed the revolts of Balban's successors and overcome the external threat of the Mongols. He has suppressed the revolt as well as he had overcome the external threat of, that means the Mongols, they were from outside. He has stopped that also. His brief rule over a period of 6 years was based on the willing support of people in the process of governance and tolerance towards religious communities. That means he had developed tolerance in the religious communities. Now comes Alauddin Khalji. Jalaluddin Khalji was murdered and succeeded by his nephew Alauddin Khalji. Alauddin was an ambitious young king, as we have seen in movie Padmavat 2. He has conquered Gujarat, Malwa and some parts of Rajasthan, and he was gifted with administrative skills and military genius. He had very good administrative skills as well as he was a very good genius. This was followed by similar campaigns in Ranthambore, Chittor, Malwa and Jalore. He had started some campaigns, army campaigns in Ranthambore, Chittor, Malwa and Jalore in Rajasthan, and then after he sent his commander Malik Kafur. Malik Kafur was his we can say that left hand or right hand to acquire the control of the Deccan. Then after he wanted to acquire the control of Deccan, and for that he had sent his commander Malik Kafur. And he had become the first Delhi Sultan to cross the Vindhya region. The fabulous wealth of Deccan drew him to the south. Then after he drew his attention to south. Eventually the charge of all southern empire campaigns was entrusted to Malik Kafur. Then after Malik Kafur had become in charge of all the southern campaign. By 1313 CE, the Yadavas of Devagiri, the Kaktiyas of Varangal, the Hoysalas of Dwarsamudra and the Pandyas of Madurai accepted Alauddin's overlordship. After his, we can say that establishment, these all people, they have taken overlordship of Alauddin Khilji. To commemorate his Deccan conquest, he built the famous Ali Darwaza near the Qutub Minar. He has built Ali Darwaza near Qutub Minar. See, in this picture also we can see. Then comes the Tughlaq dynasty. First Tughlaq dynasty ruler was Ghiyazuddin Tughlaq. Alauddin Khilji's death in 1316 CE was followed by a period of political unrest. That means politically the kingdom was completely in the conflict. The last Khalji ruler, Khusro Khan, he was killed by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, who founded the Tughlaq dynasty in 1320 CE. He was an able statesman and administrator. Ghiyasuddin believed that the state should be based on the support of the people. He advocated a policy of tolerance instead of harsh punishment. He was not believing to give harsh punishment to people. He carried out many works of public utility and built the famous Tughlaqabad fort. He had built Tughlaqabad fort too. He was succeeded by his son Muhammad bin Tughlaq in 1324 CE. Now let us learn about Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Muhammad bin Tughlaq is remembered as one of the most learned and accomplished scholar. He was a very good scholar. He was well versed in Sanskrit, Arabic and Persian, and was well read in religion, philosophy, science and literature. As we know that he was a well known and he was a well-read person. He was also a calligrapher. Calligraphy means the art of writing differently in the artistic form, and he was a rationalist too. Ibn Battuta, he has characterized him as the most humble of men and the one who is most inclined towards doing what is right and just. He was always stood on the right, on the side of right and justice. He undertook various experimental projects which, despite being innovative, and some of them were failed also. So, let us learn which were it. His empire included the southern states, Odisha, Bengal and Deccan, and soon after his accession to throne, he decided to transfer the capital from Delhi to Devagiri. See, during this Delhi Sultanate time, Delhi was the capital of Sultanate, but this Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he wanted to shift this capital from Delhi to Devagiri, and he did not want only to shift the administration part, but he wanted to shift the people also. Okay, so it was far away from Delhi. Devagiri was far away from Delhi. So the distance between Delhi and Devagiri was 1500 kilometers, and extensive arrangements were made for the long journey. Temporary shelter was made up and all for the people. For their food also some arrangements were taken place. But it was too difficult to move these many people from one place to another, and some of the people, they could not survive. Why? Because at that time only some of the carts were there, otherwise by riding the animals people have to go, or by walking people had to go. So some of the people, they died, some of they have become ill. Okay, so it was completely a failure. And after realizing the unwillingness of his ministers, courtiers and soldiers to stay at new location, Muhammad bin Tughlaq again he ordered to shift his capital from Devagiri to Delhi, and it was completely a failure. Another experiment undertaken by Muhammad bin Tughlaq was to issue bronze and copper token currency. He has issued bronze and token currency, so we can say that we can come to know that the bronze and copper's value would be equal to gold and silver. The coins had the same value as the gold and silver coins, and people were encouraged to use them in their transactions. So people have started using bronze, copper, silver and gold coins in their transaction. However, forging of new coins began at an alarming rate, and all the token currency had to be withdrawn from the market. Then after the forging, that means the making of coin, was on the continue basis, and then after all the currencies were withdrawn from the market. Muhammad bin Tughlaq increased the land tax in Ganga Yamuna Doab region in order to meet the expense of the army. To fulfill the expense of army, he had increased the tax in Ganga Yamuna Doab. At this time, the region was suffering from a famine. The peasants of the region rose in protest, and the situation went out of control. That means peasants, they have also opposed to pay more tax, and the region was situation was completely out of control. Now come Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Firoz Shah Tughlaq, who succeeded his cousin Muhammad bin Tughlaq, learned his lesson well. That means from the failure of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he had learnt many things. He aimed at consolidating his empire and hence took a number of measures aimed at reforming the administration. He wanted to reform the administration. He undertook many humanitarian measures such as banning inhuman punishment. First thing, he has banned the inhuman or the harsh punishment. And he had setting up the hospitals for the poor people, and many helping hands he had given to the needy people. Firoz Shah founded the city of Firozabad in Delhi. People in the kingdom were happy during his reign. His death in 1388 was followed by a series of rebellions which hastened the end of the Tughlaq rule. Then after the rebellion by the people, that means the people have protested against them. so which has taken the end to Tughlaq rule. Then after comes Timur's invention. The weakness of Delhi Sultanate made the empire vulnerable to external invasion. The ruler of Samarkand in Central Asia and the founder of the Timurid dynasty, Timur, he invaded the India. That means Delhi Sultanate had weakened, and from the other parts of the world the people have come and invaded on India, on Delhi Sultanate. That way, from the Timurid dynasty, Timur had come and he invaded India in 1398 CE. His army carried out an extensive plunder of Delhi and carried away enormous amount of wealth. That means he had plundered the Delhi, and they have taken numerous wealth from Delhi. The last Tughlaq ruler, Nasiruddin, was unable to check the invader. That means he could not keep an eye on them, and he was completely failed. Now comes Sayyid dynasty. Before Timur left for Delhi, he appointed Khizr Khan as his viceroy, who went on to establish the Sayyid dynasty after defeating the Tughlaqs. After defeating the Tughlaqs, Khizr Khan, he has laid the foundation of Sayyid dynasty. Khizr Khan took over as the Sultan of Delhi in 1414. He ruled for 7 years and was succeeded by his son Mubarak Shah. Yahya bin Ahmad Shrindi's Tariq-e-Mubarak Shahi, it gives a detailed account of Mubarak Shah's region. Mubarak Shah was succeeded by his nephew Muhammad Khan, who ruled as Sultan Mehmed Shah. Muhammad Khan was known as Sultan Mehmed Shah, and after his death, he was succeeded by his son, and the last ruler of the Sayyid dynasty was Alauddin Alam Shah. Now comes Lodi dynasty and decline of the Sultanate. Alauddin Alam Shah abdicated the throne in 1451 CE, and Bahlul Lodi, he became the new Sultan of Delhi, and he was the governor of Sirhind, that means Punjab. The new dynasty founded by him came to be known as the Lodi dynasty. It was the first dynasty of Afghan rulers that came to power during the Sultanate period. That means the first Afghan ruler have come into power into Delhi Sultanate. Bahlul was succeeded by his son Sikandar Lodi, and he laid the foundation of the city of Agra, and he was succeeded by Ibrahim Lodi. The first battle of Panipat in 1526 CE saw Ibrahim Lodi defeated at the hands of Babur, and the final fatal blow to the existence of the new empire. That means the Mughals. Babur has laid the foundation of the Mughal empire. So Lodis were defeated by Babur, and then after the Mughals have come into the power. Let us learn about the administration in the Sultanate. The Sultan was the central and most significant person in the Sultanate. That means whatever he said, the people had to follow. He was the commander of chief in army too. Now comes nobles and officials. The Sultan's court was composed of officials who were responsible for effective functioning of the Sultanate. The Arz-e-Mumalik, along with his deputies, looked after the employment of soldiers. That means they have to choose the soldiers, they had to give the training to the soldiers, and they have to provide the equipment also to the soldiers. The household of the Sultan, the palace guards, and the personal assistants were under the control of Wakil-e-Dar, while the Amir Jawab Hajib was the master of ceremonies at the court. Wakil-e-Dar has to give personal assistance, that means to choose the servant for the royal people and the royal palace and all. And then Amir Hajib, he was the master of ceremonies in the court. That means he had to arrange the ceremonies which are going to be placed in the court. The chief Qazi headed the justice department. Chief Qazi, he was the judge of the justice department. The nobles occupied civilian and military position in the Sultanate. and they were very close to the sultans. In order of rank, the khans were the highest, followed by the maliks. Khans, the person who were given the name Khan, he is on the highest rank. Then comes Malik, and then comes Amir. The salaries of nobles were arranged from the revenue assigned to them. They were given some of the land, and whatever they grow on the land, that is their salary. The land resources of the sultanates were divided and given to the nobles in lieu to cash for their services. Iqtadar collected taxes from the farmers in the village using the same income to maintain the army. Iqtadar, they have to collect the taxes for the farmer, and that money can go to the maintain the army. Slaves had a vast presence in the royal household. They were appointed as personal assistants as well as administrative officials. In order to meet the requirements of the royal palace, karkhanas or workshop headed by maliks were set up, wherein various items such as cloth, paintings and other articles were produced. Karkhanas were set up to get the income, and karkhanas were handled by maliks. Now comes army. The army was a significant component of the sultanate since it aided the sultan to stay in power and expand. The army consisted of foot soldiers, cavalry and horse soldiers, archers and elephants. Foot soldiers, that means infantry, they walk on foot and fight. Horses of good quality were utmost importance, and therefore the horses were imported from Arabia. The Khalji ruler Alauddin maintained a detailed description of each and every soldier. It was known as Chehra, and the branded horses were known as Dag. This kind of horses only were there in the army. Now comes the division of Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate was divided into provinces known as Suba. Whole Sultanate was divided into small provinces like states. It was called Subas, and then Subas were further divided into Shikhs, and Parganas were the subdivision of the Sikhs. Now Subas, that we can consider it state, Shikhs we can consider as district, and Parganas we can consider as taluka and villages. The provinces was headed by a governor or mufti. The province, that means the Subas, they were headed by mufti. Shikdar had to give their services to Sikh. That means Shikdar was the head of a Sikh, and the Amil was the head of the Pargana. The landowners known as Quds and Mukaddams were the most important official in the villages. The village account of or Patwari has to maintain the land record there, whose land is the particular area, who has the particular area of land, and they have to keep the record of crops which are grown on the particular area of land, and the taxes to be paid by the people. Now let us learn about the economical and social life. Economy, how the people were getting their livelihood. The Sultan depended on regular income from the land in order to pay the officials, maintain the army, and construct buildings. Various kinds of taxes such as Kharaj was known as the land tax, and house tax were used to extract revenue. To get it, the land tax was known as Kharaj. Muhammad bin Taghlaq introduced new sazis or local tax. He has given some extra taxes also, some local taxes too. He continued the demand for 1/2 of the produce as tax from the peasant. Peasant has to give whatever they have gained, whatever they have produced, one half part of that they have to give as the tax. However, lack of rainfall and famine led to farmers' inability to pay tax. Sometimes due to lacking of rain, due to the failing of crop, they were unable to pay the tax. And then after It converted into rebellions against the Sultan. His successor Firoz Shah Tughlaq introduced significant modification in the tax structure. Society. All the administrative posts in the Sultanate were reserved for the nobles who constitute the ruling class in the society. That means the nobles were only the people who were getting one or the other post in the society. Thus, distinction of the caste system permeated to all religions. Slaves were bought and sold in huge number in the market. That means the slaves means the people, they were sold and bought also in the market. At times they rose up to high post in administrative structure and army. Sometimes they get a high post in administration and army too. The peasants lived in condition of abject poverty. They were subjected to oppression from revenue officials and their demands for heavy tax. That means they were always in the pressure from the revenue officials for their demand for the heavy tax. So students, this was all about the Delhi Sultanate. In next chapter we will learn about the Mughals. So we are finishing our chapter here. Thank you.